Good morning, good afternoon, Ron Nation, George, and Pro Saints Talk here. Got a great episode. We got to preview the Saints' first preseason game of 2019. So 2018-2019 is officially behind us as 2019 begins. We look back at the second week of training camp, and of course, we dive deep down into the numbers of the Mike Thomas contract. Have fun. Enjoy.
Look at uptown people like yeah. People up in Britain like yeah. Mid-city folks like yeah. People downtown man yeah.
Where you at, Hoodats? It's your boy Ron, and we welcome you back to another episode of Pro Saints Talk. We're so happy y'all are tuned in and joining us, and the numbers keep growing, and this baby's only going up. We got everybody on board tonight. We're about a week and a half into practices, and we got more and more to break down, and we got a game coming up. George, how we doing tonight, George?
Lavish as always, Ron. 72 hours away from actual football. We've been watching a lot of training camp, and that's been fun. We had a boatload of fun in Yulman, but now we get the real thing in the Superdome. Instead of that classic rock and roll music, we're going to have some proper dome music. So just to be back with all the Rons, under the overpass, back where we belong, what more could we ask for? Ron, I'm ready to be with you, my man. Jay, how we doing?
I'm doing great, George, coming off that Sunday at Yulman. Hell of an atmosphere. If you didn't have the itch before Sunday, I definitely got it now. Just to see those guys live with our own two eyes and not have to go off Twitter videos of the local beats. We appreciate the job that they do. But just to go there and see it in person, knowing that football's right around the corner, definitely gets you excited. So ready to rock, excited for tonight. Where you at, who that's, Ronnie, the tagline. Every time you say it, I'm getting goosebumps, baby. We're getting close to September here.
I'm glad. Stat Ron, you better be on your game tonight. I want George to be just bloody after this one.
I'm doing all right, and I'm on a mission to get George tonight. It's been too long. It's my third episode, and looking forward to trying to take Jorge down. But
I'm here, baby. I'm here,
right,
baby.
all right.
Take me down. I'm here, baby. Take me
all
down.
right. I'll be listening very intently. But yeah, everything's good over here on the East Coast. DC is going well. I hear from Jorge that the DC listenership is growing up. So happy to be a part of the team and growing the Pro Saints Talk Ronnie fanhood.
All the
it's
way
a skyrocketing demographic for us, and we appreciate all the listeners from DC. And we'll touch more on that on our way out. But Ron, let's start the show, baby.
Let's start it up. And I appreciate you getting that stat correction in for us, George. We thought we were doing something smart, right? Hey, we'll record and release so that we come out on the off day when there's no news coming out. Well, then, of course, the Mike Thomas contract drops. And so we got a little blurb in there, but we wanted to go into a little bit more depth, obviously, because this is a huge deal, right? We just made Mike Thomas the highest paid wide receiver in the NFL. Obviously, the ramifications down the road that we'll get into. But for right now, I don't think anybody on this podcast can object to this contract and to a guy like Mike Thomas that is so deserving. You see the numbers, but then you also see the effect he has on the fans. And that's kind of something that you and I were talking about, George. This guy connects with the fans in a way that we haven't seen since Joe Horn. And I'm not saying that just from, hey, they both were leading receivers. They were both very successful. Just off the field charisma. We already talked about last week how Mike Thomas just gets in opponents' heads on social media. The taunting when he gets up from a first down. It's so similar to Joe Horn in the way that he would give you that little shimmy shake dance, calling out the first down and move the chains. Obviously, the cell phone. But could you just imagine what Joe Horn would be like if he had Twitter in his day? I feel like he would be just like Mike Thomas. And I feel like that's why we have this love and this kinship with him. And we feel like he is just one of us. And so I'm just so happy that he is going to be one of us for the foreseeable future. George, overall thoughts on the deal and having one of the best wide receivers in the NFL on this team for the next 5 years.
So, like we said last week, it was going to happen. It was imminent. He had all the leverage in the world. I don't want to beat a dead horse with that, but let's just remind everybody. Week 1 of training camp, opening practice, Ted Ginn and Keith Kirkwood were your starting receivers. So that's what you were looking at before Mike Thomas, can't guard Mike, resigned. So I just want to reiterate the point. There was no way we were going into this season without Mike Thomas. So it had to happen, and it did happen. Initially, I was happy. There's a huge uproar that he's now the highest paid wide receiver in history. And the Saints fans took a lot of pride in that because, like you said, there is a huge connection between him and the fans, and you felt that at Yulman. We can get into that more later. But you really felt like the team and the city is really proud of him for getting that contract because they love him. We love him. I love him. Just like Joe Horn and Steve Gleason and Deuce, these are guys that make being a Saints fan fun. And when you're a kid, you see him having fun and the antics on the sideline. That's the salt on the meat and potatoes of being a football fan, and that just makes it spicier and more enjoyable. And that's why I love Mike Thomas. It had to happen. But let's unpack it even further here. So a 5-year deal with an opt-out at 3. And we can get more of the contract details later with a special guest. However, this is the question that must be asked. Is paying a wide receiver $20 million a year wise in the Teddy Bridgewater era, which is, in all intents and purposes, a year away from happening? You think maybe we're going to have less pass attempts. We're going to be more focused on investing in defense, re-signing Kamara potentially, because you really have to focus on running the ball if Teddy Bridgewater is your quarterback. So is that contract going to look bad down the road? We'll see. I think that's a potential to occur. We have that 3rd-year opt-out. We can get out of it then. But that was my first reaction. But short term, thrilled, excited. It's going to have him have a new energy this season. He's going to be as good, no, better than before. And it's going to be fun to watch. And New Orleans loves it. New Orleans clearly proud of the guy for doing that because he's shown love to the fans. And again, the fans are showing love to him back. The Joe Horn comparison, a lot of parallels. I completely agree with you. And you made a funny comment. Imagine Joe Horn on Twitter. That's hysterical. His whole story about sending his highlight tape to Mr. Coors, like, whoa, that's hysterical. He just thought the guy had his act together, so he sent them his Itawamba Community College highlight reel, and Coors was like, look, I don't do football, but good luck. And it's just all of Joe Horn's antics nowadays would be funny in the World Wide Web. But Jay, I just said a lot. Tell me what you picked apart from the contract.
I'm going to make it short for us. I'm going to make it short. I'm not really going to get into the contract, but this is why it benefits the Saints. Pete Rose, Tom Brady, Tiger Woods, Michael Jordan, Roger Federer. You can even put Drew Brees in that basket. What do all those guys have inside of them? That's the eye of the tiger. They are self-starters, self-motivators. This is what Michael Thomas is. The moment he got the deal, I don't worry about how does money affect this guy. This guy is so ultimately driven. He's a guy you want around. So it's not about $18 million or $22 million. It's pay the guy, keep him here. People ask about Mark Ingram and his departure and what's that mean not only on the field but off the field. Mike Thomas, not even talking about what he does on the field, but I think off the field, not even talking about this community, but what he means to this team. I think he is the guy now. All those players look to Mike Thomas, especially the young guys. Ron, you've made the Odell Beckham comparison, the Diva comparison, the Joe Horn comparison. Yeah, there's some of that stuff on Twitter, but this guy's got it together. He might, lead you to believe that sometimes he's got some extra shit to him, but that's not what he's about. He's going to go as hard as they come. He's a smart guy, and I think he's going to push it to the limit sometimes, Ron, which might lead you to compare him to some of those guys. But he's not going to stir it too much where he's going to throw the head coach under the bus or the starting quarterback under the bus. So I think he's the best type of guy to have around. And if this guy 15 years ago or 15 years in the future from today, we're watching NFL Network and he's getting a gold jacket in Canton, I won't be the least bit surprised. So to me, on all accounts, a great signing for the Saints.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think all the sentiments are shared there. So, another big event that happened this past Sunday, we had a couple members of this podcast out at Yulman for the Fan Fest and the very special practice that's really turning into something uptown New Orleans at Yulman Stadium. Jay, set the scene for us. I mean, what was it like? I'm hearing reports of 12,000 people. I really
I was
regret not
walking
being
up,
able to make it.
Ron, I was walking north on Octavia, hooked to left on Willow, and you're walking down, and I'm thinking back to the 1960s when you hear these stories from our dads, that generation, about how the Saints used to play at Tulane Stadium. You see people tailgating on Willow, and it's a different deal when Willie Fritz and the Tulane Green Wave get it going, and Yeoman's to capacity at 30,000. I think Uptown's going to look a little bit like what it looked like on Sunday. But they had the fan experience up front of the Riley Center, kids running around, a bag of donuts-esque band playing, rocking the jams, selling Bud Light draft, food trucks, just a heck of a scene for an early Sunday in August, one that really sets the table for football in September. So anyway, that's what the scene was like. We get inside. Estimated attendance was about 12,000. The southern end zone looked almost full, and the west side of the stands along Audubon Boulevard were pretty packed as well. So it was great to be there. It was great to see these guys in action after we've been talking about them for so long, see them up close. First observation, I think, after working at Army for so long is, damn, these are some big dudes. Mario Davis looks like the Terminator. Alex Anzalone. I mean, just some specimens. Jared Cook in person. But that's what the scene was like, Ron. We can get into X's and O's in a little bit.
George, thoughts on the Yeoman practice? I mean, what was the vibe like?
Everything you could have wanted and then some. Great people watching. You know how in the Superdome you just see all of these characters in Louisiana all congregating in the dome on Sundays. It was that crowd at Yulman, which I go to a handful of Tulane games a year, and just to see that Ronnie Saints crowd in Yulman, great people watching, great running into a lot of the podcast. Rons were there. Our boy Cameron was there. Dr. Wessner, huge fan of the podcast. Just a lot of Colin Dodge, of course. Just a lot of guys showing us love and support. It was everything you could have wanted it to be. I'm going to attend every year. It's just a lot of fun. Fun also to sit behind the beat writers, because that's half the fun too. You see half the people you know in life in New Orleans, they're all there. Then you're seeing the Saints out there, and you're like, it's a lot of like 33. Who's that? There's a lot of checking your roster and double checking the guy, because we're a bit rusty. So it's a good way for us to get our rust off too, just like the players. And then for me though, probably the most fun aspect of it was watching the beat writers, because I'm obsessed with watching these guys on Twitter and seeing them in real life. It's just funny how they all parrot each other. They're just standing in the corner and something will happen and they'll like chime at each other and then they'll all go tweet it. And then they'll all start taking pictures of the same thing. It caught my eye. But Ron, next year we're going to have no excuses for you. We're going to sit together through the entire season and we'll mandate Yulman too, because Jay was great company, but all three of us will do a live segment next year because it's too fun to miss out.
Now that would be pretty special. We might need to work out some special media credentials for next year. So, all right, Jay, you kind of alluded to some of those initial observations. Obviously, the size of some of these guys, but who was standing out X's and O's wise?
Yeah, just going down the list right here, I think Jared Cooks is a guy we talked about a lot on this show, and he looks like a guy that is going to be even more involved than anticipated. They're doing some red zone drills, him lined up in the slot, catching the ball in the back of the end zone. Just a really big target for Brees to throw to. And then I think moving on to Drew Brees, fellow Rons, one thing that stuck out to me this week, there was an Albert Breer article where he interviewed Brees. If you get a chance, go to si.com, go to the archive about a week back and read this article. It's very indicative of what Brees is today. basically he's going to beat you with his brain, not with his arm. From 0 to 15 yards, Breeze looked elite. The zip was there. The accuracy was there. From 25 to 35 yards, I think he was good. And then beyond 35 yards, he was average. Beyond 45 yards, he was bad. So I think when you put all that together, he's still going to be a good quarterback. Looking back this past week at some of the numbers and the classic quarterbacks of all time, Marino, Elway, Steve Young, Jim Kelly, etc., Drew Brees doesn't have to throw the ball plus 50 yards for the Saints to be successful. What he has to do is not turn the ball over and manage the football like he did last year. And I think the Saints did a good job going out and getting another short area target like Jared Cook in the passing game. But adding on to that point, Alvin Kamara is a guy I think that not a lot of people are talking about because of just what's expected of him. He looked dynamic. He's going to have a career year this year. He looked like he was in fantastic shape, caught a slant over the middle, ran it 60 yards at ease, caught a little shovel pass, ran it in. I mean, this guy is playing for big money coming up, similar to Mike Thomas, and he knows it. And let's not compare this guy to your every down running back and not being able to make a lot of money, because this guy is so much more, and I think he's out for blood this year. Mike Thomas coming back, like I said, he's a self-motivator. You don't have to worry about him coming out of shape. He looked very good catching passes. Off the positivity train here for a second, Eric McCoy at center. There are a couple red flags that I noticed. He missed a blitz to Mario Davis right up the middle, missed assignment, didn't see it. That's not good. We got to keep Breeze upright. So it looks like McCoy's going to be the guy. He's been the starter for I think 15 practices in a row. Statron can check me on that. But better he makes those mistakes now than against the Texans Monday night. On defense, looked like the cornerbacks were playing pretty good football. Really noticed the linebackers playing well. And then, George, tell him about Saquon Hampton.
Saquon Hampton, if Darren Sharper came back from 8 years ago, well, I shouldn't say, if Malcolm Jenkins came back from 4 or 5 years ago and put on that jersey, you would think he was out there, because Saquon Hampton looked terrific. And he has to be surprising a lot of the Saints management out there on how fantastic the 6th round rookie is playing. This is a very difficult position. You see Marcus Williams with a lot of ups and downs. Great control of his body. Very smooth. All offseason you've been following all the beat writers talking about him. And Jay and I saw it immediately. We first said, who's that pointing at? I'm like, because he'll catch your eye immediately on how he glides through the field. He's going to find a way to push Marcus Williams. I think Marcus Williams a year ago, we had the highest of the high aspirations for him. And then what a roller coaster year it was last year, with some times that you're just like, he's playing punt returner back there. He's not the ball hawk he used to be. Sean Payton is quick on the trigger. If he's upset, he'll yank you really quickly. So don't be shocked at some point this year, Saquon finds a way starting as your free safety. And that's not like Chris Banjo at the end of the Bengals game. That is him actually playing in meaningful minutes, not barring an injury. This guy, he's going to get playing time. He's too good, too talented to leave on the sideline. One thing I want to say about McCoy, he gave up that inside rush from Demario Davis. This is a guy that gave up 1 sack at Texas A&M. Yeah, he needs to get that all out of his system. I don't think pass protection is going to be his issue. And he did have great size. Jay and I immediately recognized that. We went to the practice, like, oh, wow, Eric McCoy. It's a big boy, a great guy to have under center. Don't lose hope. Don't lose faith in him. I don't want Jay's not to think that he's not going to be great. I'm expecting him to be great. Some guys like Traquan Smith, you hope they're great. I'm expecting McCoy to be a solid, rock solid, strong center. One more hot I have for you. Simi Cobbs, smooth, catches the ball easily, great route running, found a way to get open. He looked very promising. He might find a way on this team. Emmanuel Butler, he didn't practice. He wasn't out there. wasn't out there again yesterday. So the whole first week, that's all you hear about. Emmanuel Butler. Second week, he's out. Simi Cobbs is on the rise. This could be quite the down to the wire battle. And you might even see the Saints keep 6 wide receivers because they don't want to let someone go who's too talented and it ends up biting them in the butt down the road. So, without a doubt, to me, Saquon Hampton turned heads, Simi Cobbs same. Other guys that looked
Yeah.
impressive, sure. Go ahead, Ron.
Well, I'm just glad you brought up Emmanuel Butler because it really is the tale of 2 weeks, right? I mean, the first guy to make the splash, but man, it's a long camp. And if you're an undrafted rookie, you got to come every day. I mean, it's the classic coach saying, right? Best ability is availability. And so if you're not there, your stock is plummeting. And another guy who we haven't talked about, Alize Mack, who's been a little dinged up. You know, he's another guy that no guarantees of making this roster. You got to practice every day. So it's unfortunate, but yeah, sometimes these guys lose roster spots due to injuries. So, George, go on. What were you saying?
Dan, you to the point to a T. Dan Arnold looked terrific out there. First week, you kept seeing his name on who's not looking good. Well, hey, Alize Mack goes down with that foot injury, hasn't practiced since. We signed in that mammoth tight end from Monmouth, 6'6". You know, that might tell you something. The fact that the day after Alize Mack gets injured, we sign a tight end, that might be a prolonged injury. That injury may have given Dan Arnold some cushion mentally to not have to be fighting neck and neck with Alize Mack, and now he's starting to shine. So maybe what we end up doing with Alize Mack is we IR him, we stash him, and just keep 3 tight ends because there was concern that we might have to keep 4 tight ends and not let a talented guy go. But, you know, if you can't play, you can't stay. So, looks like Dan Arnold's going to be that guy.
Jay, what about surprised you didn't mention your boy Caden Ellis? You know, we've been talking him up a good bit. Guy that was a big athlete in college, and he's getting some rave reviews.
I thought we were trying to stay on schedule tonight, Ron. I mean, we're talking about Gardner Johnson. We're talking about Saquon Hampton. We're talking about McCoy. We're talking about Alize Mack. You're asking me about Caden Ellis. We were just talking about Kamara, Thomas, Ramczyk. I mean, at some point you got to look up and be like, damn, Saints front office is hidden. You know, so let me just take a second. Let's take a second and give some kudos to the front office here for doing a good job. And I don't think it's premature, but Caden Ellis, another guy, size and athleticism jumps out. And this guy looks like he's going to be a contributor, if not on the defense, on special teams for sure. Yeah, Ron, I'd heard good things about him. I liked his film. I liked his background, son of a coach. And he definitely lived up to that. So I'm looking forward to seeing him Friday night.
Yeah, and I mean, I can't agree with you anymore there. George, you were saying that the front office has got to be surprised with Hampton. Hey, they wouldn't have drafted him if they didn't think they were, you know, expecting this out of him. So, you know, obviously they can't expect to hit a home run on every pick, but those guys, you know, they clearly saw something out of a guy on a subpar college program, right?
Marcus Colston, they were surprised at his production as a 7th-round pick. Sometimes, you know, you like what you see on the tape and you draft a guy, but holy smokes, he's so much better in person than you anticipated. This could be a Marcus Colston type experiment here where, wow,
and
he's wowing people.
Maybe he fell to the 6th round too, because every time I looked up at 1:00 on Saturday, Rutgers was getting beat 55-7 in the 3rd quarter. So if you're the free safety responsible of keeping that ball in front of you, his highlights, pretty impressive. What he's done thus far in camp, pretty impressive. But let's see when the bright lights are on in the Superdome on Friday, baby.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. So wait, another person that was back or that is officially back at practice, Kat Terrell, former beat writer, now with The Athletic. George, Kat's one of our all-time favorites, right? I mean, we've always loved that little dynamic she's had with all the other beats, you know, a local girl. And, you know, we've even looked up some stats on her, right?
That, Ron, what is the Saints' all-time record with Kat Terrell as a beat writer?
The Saints' all-time record is 25-23 with Kat Terrell at the helm. This is a regular season, but she was a beat writer from 13 to 15, and then went to Cincinnati to cover the Bengals for the last 3 seasons.
Ron, it sounds like mediocrity is back upon us. No, I'm not excited for this. They can have their fun sailing on Lake Pontchartrain all they want, but all I care about is the Saints winning. So I would take Sean Fazan and Herbie all day over Cat. Fazan, my bad, Sean Fazan. I know you're listening out there. I'll get your name correct next time. But no, not excited for Cat. She is the Greenbrier curse back in life. So maybe a beat boss is going to have to make a sacrifice here if we start off 0-2.
I love Kat. I think she's very insightful and gives great takes.
Dynamite drop in. So look, I mean, hey, the more the merrier. I also saw that that Deuce Wyndham signed up for another year with the Athletic. Another guy that puts out some really good film study, just great breakdown of the trenches. So I'll be looking forward to a lot of his material. George, I know he was a big reason you and I signed up for the Athletic.
For all the ultra Saint nerds, he's the best. He'll put a 30-minute video out on 5 plays on Davenport. He's really good. He's not one of the guys that just repeats everyone else. He's got his own takes. They're very deep, and they're very film-esque, film study-esque. He really knows football. Deuce Wyndham, he's probably the best locally. Yeah, I'm a big fan, Ron.
Ron, on the Davenport note, this is just off of feel. If he plays 14 games this year and doesn't get 10 sacks, I'm going to be shocked. And if you guys have a good bet for me to do, I'll hear it. But if he's healthy for 14 games, he's going to get at least 10 sacks.
Damn. I mean, we could put the classic burger and a beer on it. I mean, hey, 14 games, 10 sacks or more. All right. I love it. So wait, what if he
I don't want to have to pay $8. I'm talking more significant than that.
How about a Pro Saints
Say
Talk
it and mean
tattoo?
it.
How about a Pro Saints Talk tattoo?
Less significant than that.
Well, hey, I'm sure Ron will think of a good punishment for Jay if Davenport does not have 10
that one out to the
sacks.
fans.
And you know what, fans? I'll join Jay on this one because I wholeheartedly agree. He's another guy I'm expecting to have a great season. Not hoping, expecting to have a great season. As long as he plays 14 games, I agree with Jay. He'll have 10 sacks. Whatever punishment you have, minus having to take care of a live animal, I'll agree. I'll do it as well.
I love the enthusiasm. I love the vote of confidence. My only concern is Cam Jordan going to beat him to all those sacks? You know, hey, it's going to be a healthy competition on either side of the line there. So, but hey, plenty to go around, I assume. I hope. But we'll find out a little bit more this Friday, right? So, you know, this has all been building up to game action, right? And that's what we're obviously getting the most out of is when we're seeing these guys going against each other in the trenches, finally getting to hit somebody in a different uniform, all the good stuff that these guys look forward to. They've been working for a couple weeks now. Heck, they've been working for months in the off season. George, what's the most thing? I guess what are you most excited and what are you most looking forward to watching in the preseason game on Friday night?
Marshall Newhouse. I know it's a very random answer, but we need to find a backup left tackle. I know we have Jermon Bushrod on speed dial, but Pete got banged up at that Yulman practice and went home early. Pete's going to get banged up, and I like our depth with Tom and Easton. Left tackle, if Pete's out, if Armstead goes down, that puts Newhouse or Ola in. That's a bit terrifying. So, and then your other option is bringing back Bushrod. So Marshall Newhouse is apparently making Trey Hendrickson look good, and Trey Hendrickson is not that good. So if Newhouse can't get the job done protecting Bridgewater in the second half of the first game, that's a lot of cause for alarm. The second thing I'm looking for is, we just mentioned Hendrickson. I'd like to also watch Edwards. Mario Edwards, Trey Horton, and Trey Hendrickson. what's going to happen to them if they ever have to play significant snaps? Cam Jordan and Davenport are probably going to play 90% or 85 to 90% of the snaps if they're healthy. If these other guys step in, could they be the Achilles heel to our defense that'll open us up? That is the two things I'm really watching out for. What about you, Jay?
Ron, another note I wanted to make on Yulman, but I wanted to wait specifically for this segment, was Teddy Bridgewater looked really good. And you ask yourself, maybe at the time, why are the Saints paying this guy this much money? Is it because he's good, not great, and it's really hard to find a great quarterback? And if you don't have a good quarterback, you're screwed. Or is it because they see some potential in this guy to potentially be a great quarterback? What I saw on Sunday was a guy that was comfortable in the offense with an extremely quick release that threw the ball downfield very accurately, threw the ball with great touch. He was exciting to watch. And George, I disagree with you that if Breeze departs this year and Bridgewater's the man, they're going to have to run the majority of the time. Wide open playbook. This guy's not a rookie. I mean, he's a vet at this point that demanded a lot of dollars on the free agent market. And Sunday, I started to see why the front office and Coach Sean Payton have faith in this guy going forward. So going against his former team in the Vikings, that's not really why I'm excited, but I'm just excited to see him. And I thought Taysom Hill, we give him a hard time on this show because it's easy to. He does a lot for us, but for a guy that plays everywhere, he looked good just playing quarterback and throwing the ball. And he can really, really rip it. He was accurate with the football, hit Arnold for a touchdown. He's going to be fun to watch. I know those are two easy answers right there. If we go in depth like George just did, let's watch the bottom half of the quarterbacks. Another shout out to my guy, Albert Breer with SI.com. Maybe we can get him on the show. He said around the league, it is a sparse position at cornerback, and teams are going to be looking to trade for cornerback. He said, pay attention to the Patriots and the Saints, who have depth at cornerback. Ken Crawley was making plays. P.J. Williams was making plays. So look for those guys to get significant time because our front office is going to be evaluating those guys and saying, all right, who's got the best trade value? Who can we ill afford to trade that we need to keep here as depth? Because they're going to be evaluating who's the guy that we can afford to ship out while also getting good assets in return.
That's an exciting prospect there, Jay. That really is because, when was the last time we had an embarrassment of riches in the defensive secondary that we were even talking, man, we could make a deal and get some depth where we need it going on our Super Bowl run here. That's really exciting to even be talking about. So that just tells you where the personnel is on the Saints right now. So one thing y'all still haven't covered that I'm actually kind of surprised, which is usually a no-brainer going into preseason, is how about the running backs? Fat Rob Kelly got released. We turned around and signed Jaquiz Rogers, who seems to be a pretty good fit, right? A little bit more of a receiving back for those third down situations, maybe a good relief for Alvin Kamara. But one guy that I'm really going to be looking forward to is Devine Azigbo, a guy that we've talked about a lot on this podcast that you don't really see a whole lot of splash reports coming out of practice. But I got to think that's because this guy's style of running is going to be way more effective and pop out on the screen when guys are in live tackling, coming at him, and he's just bulldozing people. So I'm gonna be really excited to see Devine Azigbo play in this one. And Jay, just going back, we give clickbait a bunch of crap, but we also give him a bunch of love on this show. So he's a guy that Peyton has said without saying Breeze's replacement's on the roster. So those are a couple of things that I'm excited about. Unfortunately, George, I'm going to be leaving you behind again. So I'm going to be watching it from Baton Rouge. I'm not going to be under the overpass with y'all, which obviously we've all been having withdrawals since last January, but man, it's hitting me deep this week.
Ron, can I just say one thing about Devine Ozigbo? He's going to have to really beat out Dwayne Washington significantly because Dwayne Washington's going to get a job because he's the best gunner on the team, and he's shown a lot of pop as a running back. So we could keep, one of these talented wide receivers or an extra DT in depth that we're going to need when Onyemata and Rankins are out. So Devine, now that I'm thinking about him, is going to have tough sledding to make a roster spot. He's really going to have to outshine Washington significantly because if Washington can be your third running back plus a special teams ace, that's much more valuable than a guy who's just a running back. So Devine, I'm optimistic for him. And I agree, he's someone that needs to play to really showcase his talents. That's correct. However, it's an uphill battle on the fact that he isn't a special teams ace and Washington is. And we have so much talent elsewhere that you want to keep these guys in the locker room because you don't want to see them go to a division rival and bite you in the butt like a Tyler Davison.
Well, and something that I think you got to consider too is who's practice squad eligible, because you got to think they're going to stash a running back on the practice squad. Seems almost like a mandatory thing to do, just to get those practice reps in. And obviously, as Zigbo's eligible, StatRon might need your help looking up if Dwayne Washington's still eligible. I'm pretty sure he's been practice squad before, but doesn't that have to do with how many years you've been in the league? Maybe draft status. I'm not exactly sure. But is that an opportunity to maybe stash him there in case you do have an injury going forward? So I do agree with you, George. As we talked about, special teams is going to be the difference whether you make this team or not. But I guess I'm just more excited about the possible upside with a Zigbo than I am with Dwayne Washington.
And I don't think Rodgers is going to make the team. He's a good guy to see what we have. And if Murray or Kamara go down for a couple of weeks, you can bring him in, familiar with the playbook. Our boy Rob Kelly got green waved. Sorry, Baldwin, for that. But get Jaquiz familiar with the team. So if you need to bring him in November, he's ready to roll. Jay, you have anything on running backs before Ron takes us to set the scene for UTO?
Y'all covered it, man. Y'all are the experts on backs, so I'm good to move along. Hey, just to paint the picture for all the listeners out there. So we don't all do this in the same place. So when somebody makes a joke, I watch Ron unmute his microphone to laugh at George. I think George pointed this out in a prior episode, but it's just pretty funny to witness. I'm laughing too, George, but I'm on mute.
I appreciate the laughter or the lack thereof. But sometimes you do start cracking up, and then you want to unmute it and then laugh, and it's so delayed you sound weird. So it is a weird thing that maybe we can find a way to appropriately laugh at all of my good jokes.
We'll just get a laugh track in there. I'm sure Andrew can hook us up with something. It's going to be like the freaking audience at Seinfeld in here pretty soon. So, all right. I think I have to go back, because George, you just sparked my memory on something. You said something about, hey, maybe you get this guy familiar with the offense, and so you get an injury or something like that. You bring a guy like Rodgers back. Speaking of guys with familiarity and maybe bringing guys back, going back a couple weeks, one of our most loyal listeners, Bird, had a very interesting question that I think we dismissed all too quickly about the potential of Dez coming back. Guy we talked about tonight, Deuce Wyndham, awfully reliable source, says that, quote, from Dez, Saints will have first opportunity to sign me. So just throwing that out there, a little fodder for everyone. Keep that in the back of your head.
Is that after his New Orleans Voodoo tryout or the local XFL team? I mean, did you see the workout that he put? I mean, I love the guy, but he puts out a workout video 6 months post-operation, and he goes up for his first route and out route, and he slips, and you have secondary embarrassment. You feel bad for him. Ron, I think it's pretty safe to say this guy's never playing again.
Hey, if that's where he's at 6 months post-op, where's he going to be 12 months post-op? That's all I'm saying. So could be exponential growth. You never know. But I'm just
Ron, real quick, another one for you. I asked George about this. A guy that loves to reminisce on his glory days, just like your buddy likes to talk about his high school football days and how he had that great catch in the JV game against Ramo Bra. Reggie Bush, would he be better right now? Stat Ron, what's your answer on this? Would he be better right now than Jacquizz Rodgers for us? What if you taught Reggie Bush into coming to play a limited role for the Saints, 10% of the snaps, helped Drew win it one last time?
I don't think so. You got to go with a guy who's been, on an active roster. Reggie's been out of the league for some time now. Too much TV time for him to come back and lace him up. So I'd go with Jacquizz there.
These last two questions were the worst two questions in Pro Saints Talk history. Just to clarify for all the listeners out there, it's a hard no to both of them. The last time Reggie ran, he was -1 yards for the entire season for the Buffalo Bills. And Ron, no way.
Check that stat, Ron.
For the Buffalo Bills. And Ron,
Yeah, it's our best shot.
Ron, I think you're right. Go ahead and draft Des Bryant in fantasy, probably second, third round. I think you're onto something there for sure.
I'll be sure to snag him with my first waiver claim. And George, don't mock the questions. We got some coming up that I think might have you changing your mind on what's the worst questions we've gotten on this podcast. All right. So, all right.
Hey, correction on the Reggie Bush. It's actually it's actually -3 rushing yards. It's worse.
Yes. You are wrong, George.
But I also have
to get -3. You have to have -1.
Oh God, dude. And also, I'll save some for the rundown later. But actually, Jorge, I did get you. So sorry.
It's all love, baby. I appreciate the appreciation.
Yes.
Now, Ron, bring us to some fan questions. Let's tie a bow on this great episode.
Okay. So let's start out, I guess, with the Ron of the week. I like to kick off the segment here with our special recognition and a guy by the name of Sam Bro, a longtime listener. Let's go ahead and let's get his question right here.
What's happening, Rons? Sam Bro from the 615. We'll see you December 22nd in Nissan Stadium. I want to give a shout out to Can't Guard Mike on the new deal. Big ups. So my question to you guys is, do y'all see a shift in the culture of the Saints front office with this deal and offering these young stars, extensions and mega contracts and everything? The Saints in the past have been Drew Brees and unsung heroes, and then when some of these guys blow up, they, let them go in free agency. What do y'all think, and how do y'all think it will affect the deals of, an Alvin Kamara, Marshawn, or Ryan Ramczyk? Thanks. Who dat?
All right, so I'm going to be honest. I had to look up the 615 area code and Nissan Stadium. I still thought we were talking about LP Field for the Titans. I guess that just shows you what kind of home field advantage they got over there. But like he says, we'll see him in December. All right, first part of the question, is this a change in culture? I got to side with Mickey Loomis. In his press conference at the start of training camp, he got asked a very similar question about why we never pay skill players. And he had a pretty good rebuttal to Bobby Hebert saying, hey, why don't you look right to your right with your radio booth partner? Pretty sure we paid that guy back in 2005 a 5-year, $40 million contract. And then Lance Moore, 2011, 5 years, $20 million. Marcus Colston, 2012, 5 years, $40 million. Jimmy Graham, 2014, 4 years, $40 million. So I would challenge you, who since Jimmy Graham in 2014 has deserved this kind of deal, has deserved this kind of long-term extension at the skill player positions? So I don't think it's so much a change in culture. I just think the opportunity presented itself, and we got an all-pro and we capitalized. So I disagree with that being a cultural change. So Jay, why don't you take this next one? How many different positions will Clickbait play this season? This one's coming from Drew Sensing, another longtime listener.
Let's count him out. He's going to play quarterback. 1, he'll line up his running back. 2, he'll line up as lead blocker at fullback. 3, he'll line up as tight end blocking. 4, he'll line up in the slot at receiver. 5, he'll return kicks. 6, he'll cover kicks. 7, he'll be the shield on punts. 8, and he'll block punts, attempt to block punts. 9 different positions.
Don't forget placeholder.
Placeholder 10.
Love it. Love it. Getting in the double digits. The Matrix. The clickbait. All right. Jorge. This one coming from JNAP34. AD. Going back to Pro Pels talk here. AD promised us an Instagram goodbye and never gave us one. BS. Didn't really catch the question in that one, but what do you think about that, George?
You know what? Napoli's right. And I'm distraught about that. We need to all go to Sam's, bring about $40 with us, buy all the wholesale toilet paper we can get our hands on, and go roll his house for revenge. Because that's the only way I can see New Orleans making it whole with Anthony Davis.
Let's get the pitchforks and let's do it. So, all right. Wait, we got actually one coming from somebody that's coming out of retirement. I'm checking the live feed as we speak right now, y'all. And Hopedale Boog, our good friend Boogie, chiming in. Is Hendrickson,
I remember that guy.
Yeah, right? Is Hendrickson a legitimate NFL 3DE, or is he an NFL 3DE because we have zero depth? Jorge, you kind of touched on this one earlier. Want to hit this one?
You know, he's beating Marshall Newhouse, which isn't saying much. He's had flashes. He needs to consistently put it together. I'd rather there be a better third option than him. Does he belong in the NFL? Yes. Is he the third best option because there's no one else? Yes. Could we maybe get someone better off the streets? Probably not. So we have to groom this guy. I'd love to see a big leap from him because at times this year it appears we're going to have to count on him. So we have to groom him. This is the guy.
I agree. It's now or never for the T-Rex. We'll see if those short arms can get some leverage this year. Okay.
T-Rex. T-Rex is maxed out, man. He's maxed out. He's all effort. That's why he got to this point. I don't know how much better he's going to get. He is what he is. He's going to be the 52nd, 53rd guy on your roster. Hopefully he learns some technique as the years go along and he can get to the passer a tenth of a second faster and create some havoc.
But Jay, to go back to what you said earlier, that could be a position that we might trade a P.J. Williams, a Patrick Robinson, a Ken Crowell. I don't think Ken Crowell has any trade value, but this might be a guy that we trade a cornerback for, especially if CGJ really blossoms and we have a ton of DB depth. Then you trade one of your corners for a Bobby McCray-esque D-end that isn't getting the playing time somewhere else. He's way down the depth chart on another team. You know, the AFC North, they have so many good D-ends. We just need one to be our change of pace. I agree with Boogie. I don't have a lot of faith in Trey Hendrickson. And to me, Mario Edwards is still a question mark.
Yeah, George, that's exactly where I thought we were going to go, you know, based on Jay's speculation that if we did pull off a training camp trade, that's exactly where I was thinking we'd pick up some depth. So, all right, how timely. We got one following the Boogie out of retirement question. Nola Griff 14 asks, how's Boogie's blood pressure at this point in training camp? So let me just chime in and say, seeing how we're just going into game 1 of 4, and we just got our first interaction with him, our first Saints talk with him in how many months? I'm going to say he's probably suffering from low BP right now. He might even be 110/60 or something like that. But be sure to monitor this one throughout the season. I think he's going to be steadily ascending. So, George, we already touched on it a little bit. This Friday, the return of Under the Overpass, it's grown to be such a cult following. You know, the passerbys that check in. Set the scene for us this Friday night. I mean, humble beginnings, obviously preseason hype, not as great as, you know, going to be Monday night when we got the Texans coming in. So hit us up, how's it going to be this Friday night under the overpass?
Ron, it's better than scuba diving in the Great Coral Reef. It's better than skiing in the Alps. It is better than Galatoire's Christmas dinner. It is the best place on earth. Of course, I'm excited. We're back finally under the overpass Friday night.
Love it. Love it. Okay, so that wraps up this Pro Saints Talk episode. But before we get out of here, Stat Ron, what do we got tonight?
I got a little bit of a more hefty list than in the last couple I've been on, but it's good. It means I'm getting better, and I'm helping you guys get better. So we're all getting better.
You were really quiet.
Okay, well, yeah, we'll be the judge of that. So
okay, all right. I'm gonna start with Jorge first. Jorge mentioned we're talking about defensive ends. He mentioned Trey Horton. Trey Horton you're probably referring to Wes Horton, the defensive end. It's not
That
Trey
didn't
Horton.
feel right when it came out the mouth. I didn't stop myself.
Yeah,
Thank
because
you, Stat boy. What's my penance?
Just get better next time.
All right.
And another little, just like a petty one, but you were talking about Mike T signing a 5-year deal. It's true, but it was actually a 5-year extension, so he's got 6 seasons on his deal, not 5. But I felt like that was more of a petty one. The Trey Horton one came up, and I was like, okay,
Idiot.
Yeah, idiot. Damn it.
25 push-ups.
Yep, and 15 sit-ups.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Jay, I got you with a stat correction. Eric McCoy was actually, as of Sunday's practice, was his 5th straight practice starting with the first team, not his 15th. And so I think Herbie, TOB,
Same thing.
Yep, 5-15. Yep. And then Ron, Dwayne Washington is eligible for the practice squad. So just I knew you were curious about that.
Excellent.
And a correction on the fan question. If Boogie had a 110/60 blood pressure, he would not be considered having low blood pressure, according to the Mayo Clinic. Low blood pressure is any reading lower than 90 milligrams or millimeters of mercury for the top number and under 60 for the bottom number. So a little health check for you there.
Great job.
Glad to know that Boogie is happy and healthy.
A+.
All right, man. Saints football this Friday night, y'all. How can you not be excited? Pro Saints Talk. We out here, baby.
Okay, joining us on the show today is no other than Andy Hansen. Andy played offensive line at the University of Rhode Island, has been working in the corporate world for the last several years. Soon, you'll be hearing about Andy in a front office of an NFL squad around you. This guy is extremely bright, extremely sharp about an array of things on the NFL level, but his particular niche is salary cap. So I know for a lot of fans, including me, I don't necessarily understand the ins and outs of we have this much to spend this year, this much next year, but we can pay this guy X. So let's get into it about Mike Thomas and the future, about Kamara, Ramczyk, what we've been talking about for months. We have Andy Hansen here to break it all down for us. We're thankful to have Andy. Let's hear it, brother. Andy, thanks for coming on, brother.
Glad to be on, man.
So let's get right to it. What are your thoughts on the Michael Thomas contract?
So I like the Michael Thomas contract. A lot of people see 5 years, $100 million and think, he's getting $20 million a year, but that's not really how it works. Michael Thomas was set to make $1 million this year. And what they did is they gave him a boost this year. And then in cash, he got about $20 million. But against the Saints cap, it's only $6 million. And then if you're looking at the cap for next year and the year after that, he's getting $15 million and $16.8 million. So he's never going to even come close to that $20 million number that a lot of people think of when they hear his contract. And then if Breeze does retire after this year and Thomas doesn't produce in those 2 years where he's getting 15 and 16.8 against the cap, then the Saints have an out where they could cut him, or they can renegotiate from there or trade him. So the Saints were given a lot of flexibility in this contract that Thomas signed, and they're not paying him so much that they can no longer afford other people on their team.
Okay, so that kind of leads to the next question. You summed that up pretty well. A general question for you here. What are your thoughts on sinking in a significant amount of money like the Saints just did to that particular position, wide receiver?
So, personally, I don't like paying a wide receiver top-end money. You saw what happened with OBJ. But on the other hand, Julio Jones has signed top-tier wide receiver money, and the Falcons did great after they signed him. But conversely, you have the Calvin Johnsons of the world who can produce and break all the records and then not win a playoff game because the team doesn't have the talent to compete in the playoffs. I think with Michael Thomas, it's a little bit different just because he's been so effective for the Saints and been so effective with Drew Brees that it's hard to not pay him what he's kind of earned at this point. And he's so young and he's been so productive in the NFL, there's no point in, not paying him. And then
Exactly.
I also heard that he's such a hard worker and he is so important in the facility that the Saints didn't mind giving him that money because they weren't afraid that they were going to pay him and then he was going to stop trying. They knew that they were paying a guy that they could really trust to be a leader on their team and to come in and do the right thing every single day.
We've heard the same things down here, Andy, and I think, as I mentioned on this podcast that's coming out today, I think what he brings from an intangible standpoint is just as strong as what he brings on the field, and that's saying a lot. We touched on Mike Thomas here. Alvin Kamara, kind of a jack of all trades, does it all. We're out at practice on Sunday night, and there are no signs of this guy slowing down. Talk about his value a little bit.
I think Kamara is probably the best player per dollar in the NFL right now. You talk about a guy that really is the screw that holds your offense together. It's Kamara, because you're looking at a guy that when he's on the field, the defense needs to be ready to cover him as a runner. The defense needs to be ready to cover him as a receiver. So they're usually going with smaller personnel to try to have the person one-on-one with him being a corner fast safety type or giving him a fast linebacker with safety help. And in either of those situations, the Saints can go heavy personnel and run straight at you because now you're a smaller defense. But the Saints are only paying him $486,000 against the cap. $1.05 million against the cap. So you're looking at close to a 0.5% of their cap is going to a guy that the other defense has been looking to try to figure out how to defend the most effectively all week. And you just don't have that in the NFL. Like, he is really probably the most important player on your team this year.
If you had to put a number on it, what type of money annually do you think Kamara will yield?
Oof. See, this is a hard question because
could he be one of those guys that, is he a defensive end or is he an outside line? He couldn't be one of those guys that could argue for himself as a receiver. Could he?
I think he can. I think he actually has a better claim to that than Le'Veon Bell does. Because I could see Alvin Kamara producing like this on other teams, and he's just so much faster and so much more elusive than I think Le'Veon Bell is. Le'Veon Bell has that power aspect that I don't know if Kamara really can, but he doesn't need it. He's just so quick and so elusive, and he has great hands, and he's really good at catching, turning, and figuring out where to go.
We're certainly Certainly lucky to have him. I think he's a perfect fit in this offense. He's got a great skill set, but him matched up with Sean Payton, kind of like Drew Brees, is a match made in heaven. And I'm not saying that he wouldn't be successful somewhere else, but I think he fits extremely well here in New Orleans. Andy, is there any chance you're looking at this young core, and credit to the Saints front office for being able to draft guys like Thomas, Kamara, Lattimore, Ramczyk, etc. We signed Thomas. We talked about the money that Kamara could possibly demand. Marshawn Lattimore, we'll see what he is in year 3. You have Ryan Ramczyk. That's an all-pro right tackle already in year 2. What are the chances that the Saints can hold on to this young core post-Drew Brees?
So with Lattimore and Ramczyk, you have those guys for the next 2 years no matter what. Both of those guys are going to get 5th-year options, so you're not even going to have to worry about re-signing them until 2022. What you could see is something similar that happened to Carson Wentz, where if they really like them and they know they're going to hitch their wagon to these guys for the long term, and I think with Lattimore, you kind of should be doing that because the Saints had such peril on their defense for so long that when you get a guy that's really a home run, you got to keep him. So what they could do is, instead of giving him that 5th-year option, they can extend him and dump a bunch of money into that 5th year and 4th year and move all of the money so it's spread evenly. So they get a contract extension where it would be, if you signed a free agent for $100 million in 4 years, you're giving that guy $25 million a year. If you sign your own player to a 4-year, $100 million deal, you can spread that money over all of the years that you currently have him. So, it's a little bit easier when you're talking about a rookie who should be making, $2.8 million to then give him $10 extra million this year. And it really cuts that heavy number down a lot over the long term. Whereas if, you're going to let Marshawn Lattimore go, you're going to sign a different guy and bring him in, he might be making $10, $15 million less on that contract. So he's a quote unquote cheaper free agent. But realistically, the way that you could have used your money in-house is being used the same for a lesser player.
So we got Andy Hansen breaking it down for us. What was once complicated, he's putting in small, chewy bites for us. This isn't great stuff. This is dynamic stuff. Andy, before you go, any take on the New Orleans Saints in 2019?
So I think with the addition of Jared Cook, you kind of get another one of those skill players that you can rely on in the passing game. He's a great tight end. I really like him as a player. You guys probably should have been 14-2 if you didn't walk into week 1 thinking it was a tune-up game against the Bucs. So I don't see you taking too far of a step back, to the mean. I think the Falcons are harder this year because, their defense isn't dead. I think that you shouldn't have too much trouble with the Panthers. I don't think that they've made actual change to be more competitive, and I think the Buccaneers are not great. So I think the Saints' only real competition in the division this year is with Atlanta. So if they can beat Atlanta at home, then they'll probably be either the 1 or 2 seed in the NFC.
Awesome. Well, that's Andy Hansen. When you see him in 2035 running a team on Hard Knocks, you could say, I heard him here first on Pro Saints Talk. This is Andy's first visit, but certainly won't be his last. Andy, appreciate you breaking it down for us today.
Hey, thanks for having me on, man.
Coach, all I need is a chance. Master P. Lambo. Put me in the game, Coach. I bet we win. I don't care who we play. All we do is win. All we do is ball. Put me in the game, Coach. You wanna win it all. All we do is win. All we do is ball. Put me in the game, Coach. You wanna win it all. All we do is win. All we do is ball. Put me in the game, Coach. You wanna win it all. All we do is win. All we do is ball. Put me
This podcast dream would only be a dream if not for Andrew Simmons behind the ones and twos doing the hard part. So a big shout out to our sound engineer, Andrew Simmons.